You probably have a picture in your head of what ancient humans ate. Meat, big slabs of it, a mammoth on a spit, a fire crackling, a group of muscular hunters dragging home dinner. That image is everywhere. It's in documentaries, it's on the cover of diet books, it's almost completely wrong. Here's the strange part. For most of human prehistory, meat was the unreliable guest at the table, not the main course. Hunting is hard. It fails more than it succeeds. A skilled hunter with a spear might miss for days, weeks. So what filled the gap? Plants, roots, insects, shellfish when you could get them, and one resource so undervalued today that most people don't even think of it as food: the tuber. Anthropologist Richard Wrangham has spent decades studying this exact question. His research points to something that reframes the entire story of human evolution. It isn't the spear that made you who you are. It's the fire. Wrangham's cooking hypothesis argues that around 2 million years ago, early humans began cooking their food, and that single shift changed everything about the body you live in today. Cooked food is easier to digest. It releases more calories per bite. Your gut, which used to need to be long and heavy to break down tough raw plants, could shrink. And when your gut shrinks, it frees up energy. Energy that has to go somewhere. It went to your brain. Think about that for a second. The device you're using to understand this sentence right now exists partly because your ancestors figured out how to make a fire and throw a root into it. Not because they got better at killing things, because they got better at softening things. But cooking alone doesn't explain the whole picture. You also need to know what was actually available to eat, day to day, season to season. And for that, researchers didn't just dig through fossils. They went and watched people who still live the way your distant ancestors did.
Anthropologist Catherine Milton studied hunter-gatherer diets directly, observing groups whose food patterns had changed very little over thousands of years. What she found broke the myth wide open. In many of these societies, gathered plant foods made up the majority of caloric intake, not meat. Women, gathering roots, tubers, nuts, and fruit, were often bringing in the more dependable share of calories. Men might return from a hunt empty-handed. The gatherers rarely did. This matters because it changes who you imagine when you picture survival. It wasn't only the hunter with the spear standing between your ancestors and starvation. It was the person on their knees, digging with a stick, pulling a root out of dry ground. There's a reason this story got lost. Meat is dramatic. It photographs well. A hunt has a beginning, a climax, a triumphant return. Digging up a tuber does not make for a good cave painting, but absence from the art doesn't mean absence from the plate. So what did an actual day of eating look like tens of thousands of years ago? Picture waking before sunrise, no breakfast waiting for you. You walk, you look, you dig. Termite mounds might get cracked open for their contents. Wild greens might get pulled and eaten raw on the spot. If a beehive is found, that's a jackpot of concentrated sugar, and it gets ripped open immediately, stings and all. Later, if the men return with an animal, there's a feast. Everyone eats until they're stuffed because there's no refrigerator. Meat spoils. It has to be eaten now or shared now because there is no later. This on-again, off-again rhythm of feast and near-fast is something modern researchers have zeroed in on. Anthropologist Lauren Cordain, who spent years reconstructing ancestral eating patterns, pointed out that variability itself was normal. Some days brought abundance, other days brought almost nothing but forage scraps. Your body evolved inside that unpredictability. It didn't evolve to expect 3 regular meals delivered at the same time every single day. That's worth sitting with for a moment. The steady, clockwork eating schedule you follow now, breakfast at 7, lunch at noon, dinner at 6, is a modern invention. Your biology doesn't actually expect it. It expects feast, then scarcity, then feast again. Now here's the twist that reframes everything you just heard. If the ancestral diet was mostly plants, with meat as an occasional windfall, why does so much modern messaging insist the opposite? Why is the caveman in your head always holding a giant piece of meat? Some of that comes from where the fossil evidence survives best. Bones and stone tools last for hundreds of thousands of years. Plant remains rot away almost immediately. Archaeologists are working with a record that's tilted from the start, biased toward the things that happen to survive, not the things that were actually eaten most often. For a long time, that skewed evidence skewed the story. There's something else, too. The diet of your ancestors wasn't one diet. It changed dramatically depending on where they lived. A group near the coast of what's now South Africa was eating shellfish, rich in the fatty acids linked to brain development. A group in a dry inland region was surviving mostly on tough tubers and the occasional small animal. A group near the equator had year-round access to fruit. There was no single ancestral menu. There were thousands of local menus shaped entirely by geography. That diversity is actually one of the most important parts of the story. Your body isn't built around one specific ideal food. It's built around flexibility. Your ancestors survived by being able to eat almost anything the local environment offered and adjust when that environment changed. That adaptability is arguably the single greatest survival tool your species ever had, more important than any specific food itself. So think again about tonight's meal in the box. In one sense, it's the strangest thing your body has ever encountered. Predictable, available at any hour, calorie-dense, requiring almost no effort to obtain. In another sense, reaching for it is the most human thing you could possibly do. Your ancestors were opportunists. They took whatever was easiest and most abundant. Right now, that happens to be a box on a shelf instead of a root in the ground. The unpredictability that shaped your body hasn't gone anywhere either. Modern researchers studying appetite and metabolism have found that your body still carries the old feast or famine wiring, the instinct to eat more than you need when food is plentiful, because for almost all of human history, plentiful didn't last. That instinct isn't a flaw, it's a memory written into you by 100,000 generations of unpredictable harvests. Which brings the story back to where it started. You picked up a box tonight without a second thought. No fire to build, no ground to dig, no gamble on whether the hunt would succeed. But somewhere underneath that convenience, your body is still running on ancient rules, rules written by roots, by fire, by feast and scarcity, long before anyone ever thought to put dinner inside a box.